What's up, world? What's up, Zion? It's Prince Easy coming at you again, once more, as usual. I do have a couple slides that I want to share with you in this fine day that we're having, right? And of course, before we get to those slides, I want to issue a disclaimer, right? A copyright disclaimer for the copywritten material that's going to be shared in this here video, right? So, of course, this it's going to be primarily us trying to update each other pertaining to how geopolitics is unfolding, right? So yeah, let's get into it, right? So um, what we are gonna do is what I began um, last time with the journalists I showed, right? And basically, I'm gonna be simulating what the Western media can possibly cook up, right? Now, in that same spirit, this here, right, we can pull from record what, right, they have uh, said about this, and it's all in the line of trying to trigger an emotional response, right, with the whole invoking of child soldiers. It always comes up, right? He always says at one point they are so desperate for men. Now they are employing boys to fight their wars, right, to maintain their huntership. If you catch my drift, right? So in everything that you do, have a habit, right? Have a habit of knowing exactly what they might probably say, right? Because it seems whatever good thing we do for ourselves interferes for their interests, right? And that's how the world is being set up, right? That's how the world is being set up, right? That we are obligated to protect them and their interests, right? While they talk all type of nonsense about us, right? That we don't like progress, we are not used to progress, we don't deserve progress, right? We never known progress if it was not for the white people coming into our continent and establishing early infrastructure and stuff. Right? These are the things that keep floating out there from then and there. I wonder why the Hezbollah is attacking the IDF. I wonder. And from where? Yeah, crazy life in the jungle. It's happening again. So, RFI, DW, right? And, well, in the case of AES, right, the guy in the front is the French, right? But there are a lot of silent partners, if you know what I mean, right? Silent partners, people with interests that align with France and will help them, right? Because we are not dealing with multiple entities here. We are dealing with a singular entity, right? Yeah, Jimmy Fox. You finna catch another disease. Right? Before the other one, right, where he was talking about cloning Tyrone. That was not the point, right? They did not go after him because of they cloned Tyrone, or they was talking about clones and stuff. There's a bigger conspiracy in that whole movie, right? And it all has to do with eugenics, right? So basically the plot, right, I can talk about the movie Soldier, right? The plot is the story about a black man and how far he is willing to go to conform to the Western ideology of what is desirable, right? Desirable to be close to, right? So out of trauma, after his younger brother was killed, he started a program where his whole mission was to basically eliminate black skin. If not so, then control the minds to make them suitable, right? To keep them safe in a way, right? And also, there's also talk of Zion in there, right? And I believe that was why they went after him, right? Mount Zion. He exposed things that most Christians are not taught about Mount Zion and the refuge it provides against the world, that is. And then what happened, right? And again, he was playing the same Jesus-like Christ-like character, right? People noticed that he had a tattoo of the crown of thorns in his head, right? Tattooed all over his head. But after he fell sick, the tattoo, let's just say, disappeared, right? Now I don't know if it was a real tattoo or not, but it existed, right? And this is just another clue for those who know and understand what is happening, right? And the last time I talked about this was I mentioned Nas, Kendrick, and Kanye, right, playing this Christ-like figure, right? And you can look at into their real life, right? They are always involved in some drama, right? And they are painted as some sort of heroes or revolutionaries, right? But it's simply controlled opposition, right? Controlled opposition. Well, this right here was insightful, right? You have to listen to yourself what our ancestors wrote back in the days, right, when they were trying to fight the imperialist ideologies, right? Right, these economists then come up with a new model that is heavily prominent these days, right? Especially in advanced capitalist economies, right? They call it a K-shaped economy, and it's only growing wider, right? With subsidies and stuff, right? Elon Musk, he's been getting free money and declaring himself a trillionaire at the same time, right? It is confusing. So many Muslim scholars are coming out, right, being offended and all of this, right? Just like how the Christian will protect the Zionists because of the false idea about them being the Israelites, right, of old. It's the same thing here, right? These Muslim brethren of this particular type, they cover up what they're really offended about, right? Traore did not attack Islam. I repeat again, he attacked Arabs and their past, right? Wanting them to confront their past. And that seems to offend some people. The very idea, right, that these people who they thought were so righteous, right, that they brought them Islam, They feel offended. They feel offended that you would say such things about the Arab, right? The people who the Prophet chose to come through, right? And this is just a thing, right? In every religion, believe it or not. Because at the end of the day, all of them believe that their belief is going to rule the world. So they are just doing their part, so they say. Right? And he did not say that he's not allowing. He was talking about a very particular subject matter, about the 700 or so children who went out there to learn a thing that really does not, in the long run, benefit the whole, right? Like he said, those children did not have any skills, right? This is just them. The other time, a couple months back, I saw a thing floating around that some genius, right, in these Arab nations thought that the Burkinabes right now need mosques, right? And he was offering to build these mosques. Well, I think people have to understand this, right? It's corruption, right? It's corruption, right? These people are hiding behind religion and faith, right, to cover up their greed, right? And they believe that anywhere that the Arab language is spoken and the faith exists, then it's the same. It can same be applied to the Francophone zone. What do you think that is, right? Or the Commonwealth, right? These are and what you need to understand is that when it gets down to it, right? When people are confronted with the choice, right, to choose their fellow men, their fellow countrymen, or what their religious leaders tell them to do, it always results in conflict. It always results in conflict, right? So it has always been about influence and stuff, right? Just like back in the days, right? From the scripture, we see the Pharisees and the Romans, right? They interdepended on each other, right? To basically have power over those people who are trying to can probably dissent in the middle, right? Later on, I mean, right? People who would, I don't know, what do you say, would go against them in the future. And this type of thinking, right, that's gonna be a lot very problematic, right? It is a big problem in Nigeria, right? Now it is reaching a point that some individuals are even suggesting that some regions should be, I don't know, led by the Sharia law, basically wanting all of those Christians that exist in those regions to basically just leave. Go into places where they would be accepted, right? Because Sharia law, when it is practiced, right, it just does not affect the Muslim, right? Because the same Muslim might enter into a conflict with a non-Muslim. What then? Are we going to create a third party And is that party gonna be okay religious wise, right? Because we're talking about things of faith here. It's not. Because as per their view, they are not supposed to be in relation with the kafir. Right? They know for a fact if they practice Sharia law in their own homes, it wouldn't work out so great. It wouldn't work out so great. Same applies to any other religion out there. So what then? It creates this environment of hypocrisy and misdirection and projection. Yeah. Right. They rather say aliens built them, or I don't know, mixed race people built them, right? Built race people built them, right? Even the Israelites of the U.S., right? The black Israelites of the U.S., they are totally like xenophobic, because they keep insisting, right? They keep the same talking points the xenophobic FBAs keep talking about. They are using the same talking points, right? They say Africans are ugly. They say Africans stink. Africans actually participated in their enslavement. It's a whole nine, right? Basically, the Black Israelites movement and the FBA movement, they are both, and the so-called ADOS, they are both hate groups, right? Hate groups. And why? Because again, right, they deem themselves to be a certain Christ of Negro, right? Separate from the normal African Negro, right? The loser, the poor, the one. If I even heard one guy say they are taking showers with cow piss. Yes, literally, a Hebrew Israelite, right? The person who says they are believers of Christ and they are following Christ, right? As they say, Yahweh Shai, Mashiach, and all of that, right? The language itself, it's a telltale sign that you are lost, because that's not Bantu. That's not Bantu. Okay, that is not Bantu. It is something else, right? And I've been following a scholar, right? And you can see it even in their attire, right? These different black Israelite groups in America, right? Some of them even rock the Star of Renfram in their whole situation, right? Let's just begin there, right? Who told you a star looked like that? Where did you even get that description? And if you say it's tradition, then you are telling me that that tradition survived. Your transportation and your forced assimilation into the US, that thing survived, that it is now revived, right? These traditions, they need to be preserved by practices, right? So where did you get your whole situation from, right? And don't take the scapegoat answer of I was inspired by a vision or something, right? That we'll circle back to this, right? But again, like I say, the best people to address this, in some cases, it is a honest misunderstanding, right? It would be their fellow black Americans to address their xenophobic, right? Because when we speak it seems that we are engaging in war and retaliation and stuff, right? But the reality is, if they were to drop you black Americans, any one of you, they were to drop you in the center of any busy African city, nobody would care or recognize who you are, right? Right. Unless, of course, you do the obvious, like speak or do certain things, right? Because an African is an African, right? You have picked up the Western lifestyle, right? And of course, there is a slight difference when that same situation. So there is an adjustment that needs to happen. Yeah. Look at the destruction in the forefront and look at the fireball in the background. Why would these Western medias report any of this? They're not telling you. They're not going to tell you that, regardless, it's Al Jazeera or whatever, they're not going to tell you that the bombing is still continuing, right? They're still bombing Palestinian tents, still harassing, still kidnapping, still raping. That's murderous intent all over. So, Saudi Arabia said on July 30 that 14 countries have agreed to support a proposed multinational maritime defense coalition aimed at protecting commercial shipping through the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, as regional tension continue to threaten one of the busiest trade corridors. The initiative comes after repeated attacks on vessels linked to Saudi Arabia and growing security concerns over maritime traffic. So, what are they gonna do? This coalition, right, of 14 countries. What are they gonna do exactly? Are they gonna go to war? Or are they gonna, I don't know, pretend like bodyguards and stuff, right? And charge a sum for the service? You rather form a coalition to fight and die than have a conversation, a realistic conversation of what your countries have done against Iran and Yemen. So please, my advice, do not engage. Don't even think about it. You are just now suffering the consequences of your stupidity, your complicity, of years of aggression. And now all of a sudden, some of you are acting all fresh, you know? Like now they're discovering, wow, these people are, you know, all of this aggressive and all I'm saying, a lot of ships are gonna burn. And like I said in that previous video a couple months back, you do not want to sink in those straits. There's something about the waters there, right, that cause a very terrific, not terrific, horrific death. Just for the record. Okay? So when you are sanctioned to get supplies to make weapons, you don't look at the world funny. Okay? So this conversation, I think we done had it a really long time ago, right? Where everything African seems to be referring or trying to go backwards and not looking forward, right? So this supposed makeover, right, after so-called ditching the Western uniforms, right? These Western uniforms, would they be considered traditional? Are they traditional uniforms, right? Even maybe for the French people, are they a product of their traditions? So are they not tradition clothing? But nah, right? They have to associate themselves with progress, right? They have to associate themselves with progress, us with backwardness, right? So the language is always comes through, right? It was the same conversation when they were talking about when they basically redesigned how their judges uniforms were I don't know how they were designed from the bottom up. They changed the whole thing. They did the same thing. They used the same language, traditional, right? It's the same as, what is that other word they use? Native. Or there's the other one, right? These people are wordsmiths and stuff, right? Anything related to us is to be considered backward, and they have invested a lot of money to keep it that way. Why? Because they don't want us to progress. A good image goes a long way when it comes to international investment, especially. That's why it is really, really hard to fight these Western medias. Because, again, they have the ability to destroy a country's image. And they can even destroy you when you're trying to fight back at them. So, traditional makeover. GMS Alaya Chalaya Baya. One of those black Israelites. Right? If you listen to their opinions about Africans, it's the same ignorance the xenophobic FBA is expressed. It's the same line of thinking. Right? They think of Africa as this one monolithic structure that has not even interacted with the world, right? So, circling back to this, I have heard some crazy stuff from these brethren here, man. From space aliens coming in the last days, to them somehow getting powers, supernatural powers to fly. Basically what I hinted the other time, right? Their desire to become angels. People have gone really, really far, right? Where do you think the whole living forever notion comes from? Angels, right? Angels. So, again, why would you have plasma eyes? Do you think this ideology is new? What do you think Superman is about? No, you're not gonna have plasma eyes. You're gonna have to fight it out. Okay? You're gonna have to fight it out. Right, so my suggestion is you just stop. Right? You just stop. You're describing non-human. But we're gonna see. Right? So below Fauci, right? The whole Fauci debacle is funny. And I would say the same thing I said about the 9/11 thing. You heard that? Right? Where they were sitting in a meeting and talking about the events of 9/11 and people were expecting the system to be truthful. Right? For them, it would be extremely catastrophic. Right? And this is this is your leverage. Right? This is your leverage. Pressing them on these matters, right? The Epstein files, right? And I'm quite sure now they're just cooking up other stuff, right? Because they know at the end of the road they're gonna have to tell you something, and they're already preparing to tell you something as of now, right? And it's the same thing with the 9/11 event and what really happened, right? What really happened. Right? Was it the so-called Saudis and stuff, or was it a bigger conspiracy? It's the same thing with COVID, right? Because it involves powers that are not nations, right? And that would destroy the system, right? Because you believe that everything is about nations. No. It's much worse than that, right? Yes, of course, they do care about land and where they reside, yes. But they don't see the world the same way that everyone else sees it, right? So again, he feels comfortable. Right? He can tell you all of those, I plead the fifth, right? How many times? 100 or more? You know, he has time for this, right? He has time for this, right? Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan met with the new Hamas leader Kyle Haya. In his delegation on Wednesday, July 29, the Turkish Foreign Minister said Fayda wished Haya success in his new role as overall leader of Hamas. The Turkish Foreign Minister so said, adding that Haya said Hamas is following a constructive approach in peace negotiations. Haya was named as Hamas leader early this month, replacing Yahya Sinwar, who was killed in combat with the Israeli forces in October 2024. Fidan said Turkey supports Palestinians in their just cause and that all efforts are made for humanitarian aid to reach Gaza, the sources said. Ankara will continue to support the peace process. Fidan also said, according to the sources. Yeah, another whole situation initiated by the United States and their so-called interventionism, right? They just kidnap, a kingpin, and expect everything to be fine. No, it won't be fine, right? And from their perspective, you are just other powerful drug dealers, right? Because let's be real, right? You are just the opposing drug dealers. So yeah, I'm hearing a lot coming out of there, right? The use of drones and everything. Yeah. You think they're preparing to fight armies like this? Who are they preparing to fight like this? That's what I wonder. Now I don't know if this is true, but we're gonna see. Yeah. Well, I think people miss the whole point of even the first Black Panther, right? And the challenges it brought up, right? Because indeed, right, the first Black Panther, yeah, it had kind of FBA connotations and stuff, right? The whole thing, you have to look at it as a leader, right? And of course, those things might sometimes not align with what an individual might want, but at the end of the day, it's what benefits the most, right? But again, this beef against the diaspora and the mainlanders, right? The continentals, right? The collision of cultures and the chaos that ensues, right? Because believe it or not, it will be. But again, right, it's proper that the Black Americans are addressing their ignorance. Yeah, President Tinubu is taking steps out here. Right? We don't want to hear now, no 200, 500 children just kidnapped and stuff. Right? Go to the source of this problem here. Yeah, this has also been coming up. I just want to put it up there for when I found out why. Right? All of a sudden, this became a very big deal. Now, does this hint is the preparation of war? I don't know, but we are gonna see. This is Elon Musk's response, and the comments say it looks really unreal. Yes, fishy, no pun intended. Iraqi Forces Commander-in-Chief will request evidence of the targeting of Saudi Arabia and receive no response, right? So for those contexts, right? They say that the Iraqis attacked, or an attack came from Iraq towards them, right? So the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces confirmed that there's no evidence of attack originated from Iraq and announces a plan to protect sovereignty. The Commander-in-Chief of the Iraqi Armed Forces visited the headquarters of the Popular Mobilization Forces, directing that the martyrs be honored and the wounded be cared for, and emphasized continued support from the member organization. The spokesperson of the Commander-in-Chief said that the Iraqi government had demanded evidence and proof regarding the claim that the attack originated from Iraq territory, but no party had provided anything to substantiate their claim. They just went ahead and just dropped bombs on heads, without any proof. This is how they work, these people. He added that security leaders are working on preparing a plan aimed at preventing attacks and preserving Iraqi sovereignty, stressing that the government will not allow any individual actor or any violation originating from Iraqi territory. He stressed that the security forces are the only entity responsible for security file and that the government will not allow presence of any weapon outside the framework of a state. He pointed out that the Saudi America aggression hampered effort to investigate allegations related to targeting Saudi Arabia. Iranian television reported that the missile attack targeting the Mofarak Salti Bay air base in Jordan were carried out based on intelligence received by Qatam Al-Anbiya headquarters. He added that the operation came after the United States redeployed A-10s and AF-15 fighter jets and new military systems inside the base, noting that the aerospace forces of the Revolutionary Guard carried out a surprise operation during which it was able to destroy its targets. Right, so part of the MOU was them reducing their military presence in the so-called Middle East, right? But again, what are we talking about here, right? So again, an increase in military equipment. What do you think they are? Do you think they're there for show? Do you think A-10 Warthogs are there for show? Do you think F-15 fighter jets are there to perform acrobatics and stuff? No. These are tools of war, tools of death. Right? And people have been laughing as if like these things are just, Europeans just talking proudly. We are going to deliver these devices to kill Russians, and that's no wonder the Russians are, they feel the way they feel, because it is ridiculous. Right? It is ridiculous. So, anyway, this is the reality on the ground. Iran television confirmed the removals of the U.S. forces in the region are under surveillance, and that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and Army will target identified targets as soon as possible if the need arises. He also considered that Mofarak Salti Base had become the main headquarters for the deployment of the air fleet of the American Air Command in the West Asia, adding that the Aerospace Force of the Revolutionary Guard had imposed a long arm and missile control over the skies of Jordan. Earlier, the Revolutionary Guard announced that its air base and the U.S. Aerospace Forces had targeted in Jordan with Army Central Command headquarters several ballistic missiles. Right? Had previously warned the Revolutionary Guard general public in the countries where American soldiers are stationed to stay away from them, after many officers and soldiers of the aggressor American army left their bases in fear of the Islamic fighters. Fire took up the building and the citizens and placed to commit their crimes, right? So, this is what the products of the Saudi retaliation after the supposed attack from Iraq, right, which they did not provide proof for. Okay, these are real caskets, right? Not political statements and stuff. Right? Let's switch up the gears to the other part of the madness, right? He said that during their meeting on Tuesday, 20th July, Trump agreed to accelerate the issue of licenses for the production of the Patriot interceptor. However, Zelensky noted that even in Ukraine, if Ukraine received the license, it would still take between 1 or 5 years to produce a significant number of interceptor missiles. He stressed that such a time frame is unacceptable. He can say like this, right, because he knows for a fact it is America's war. He was told by the Americans and the Europeans to do this. So he can afford to speak like this. Right? This is not a request. They pushed for this, and now they are pretending as if it is. Remember the javelins? Right? Saint Javelina? Remember those images? And Trump bragging about providing javelins. What do you think? Again, like the 15 and A-10s, what do you think they are for? Toys? Show equipment? Movie props? No, those are tools of death. right? And a lot of Russians died because of those javelins. But again, unacceptable. And said he wants Ukraine to receive 300 Patriot interceptor missiles before winter, because he knows it's going to be rough. And that's not even enough. Okay, that's not even task. Everything indicates Russia cruise missiles hit Poland. Indicates. Okay, this is how evidence-based people speak. Right? The object left a 10-meter crater, but no casualties in Poland's Lublin province near the Ukrainian border. An airborne object. Okay, notice the shift. Notice the shift. Notice the shift. Here, right, they say it is a Russian cruise missile. Here, at the beginning of their so-called article, their statements, they begin with an airborne object, right? That ranges from a stone from a slingshot to a tiny DJI drone to a whole Boeing 707, right? Because it is an object, okay? And this object, right, it crashed, okay, in eastern Poland early Thursday during Russia's latest attack on Ukraine. Okay, so they want you to connect this supposed object, which can be anything, right? It depends on what they want in this particular moment, right? What is convenient, right? Maybe a missile is too much. They might downgrade it to a drone without any munition, you know? And now they proceed to tell us also the thing crashed, right? So they have a crash site. So they do not know the difference, right, between a missile crash site and a drone crash site, and basically they are new to this, right? And of course, they are also talking about scattered debris, right? Debris of what? An object, okay? Debris of an object. Not a cruise missile, okay? Yes, it can be a cruise missile. It can be a lot of things, okay? Because we have heard a lot of incursions in the past, right? The Polish authorities have said, right? So they cannot establish where these debris belong to, right? Because a ballistic missile and a cruise missile and a drone, right? You can tell them apart, you can't, right? But what is for sure is the 10-meter wide crater, right? So it must be an explosive device, right? You can just make like that, right? That is some high-level propaganda right there, right? So let's proceed. The project was detected moving westward through Polish airspace at 3:40 a.m. according to the country's operational command. An F-16 fighter jet was sent to identify and intercept, but the object disappeared from radar 6 minutes later, right, before it could be identified. This whole story stinks, right? This is some bad propaganda journalism, right? These people need to do better, right? They're just confusing the masses at this point. Right? And maybe that's the whole point of this whole piece here, right? But this type of situation have the potential to drag nations into war. That's why I talk about it. Because when the missiles start flying, we need to understand what happened. and who is the real aggressor. Okay, up to this point, the real aggressor is Poland, right? Poland has been helping arm and legs the Ukrainian people, right? Giving them weapons to kill the Russians, right? The bare minimum the Russians can do is send a single ballistic missile to make a 10-meter crater wide, right? We have to emphasize on that. It's a wide crater, not deep, right? And this object disappeared, but it crashed, but it disappeared, and they have debris. This is just like I don't know what level of propaganda is this. I don't know. You don't even need to read between the lines, you know. The lines themselves are confusing enough. So, of course, since they won't talk about the successes of the AES, we are going to talk about them. And of course, they are going to say we are being paid to do so. And like I said, prove it. Anyway, those are the updates as for now, right? So we're gonna have a conversation the next time we have a conversation about geopolitics and stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna put a pin on it right there, and we're gonna hear from each other when we hear from each other. Prince Easy signing out. Love you. Bye.